the first line of defense whenever it comes to ADHD treatment in kids isn't even anything to do with the kids. It's parental training. And what that means is taking the time for the parents to get an understanding of what ADHD or autism is, and then working with a therapist to kind of get an understanding of what that means for their kid. And so that they have a better understanding of what to expect. Because now what we have to do is, a lot of parents read those books like What to Expect When You're Expecting and things like that. And it lays out all these milestones that a person is supposed to meet, like by a certain age. Well, that's for neurotypical people.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome to another episode of Mediocre Dads, where being mediocre is a choice. And you have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. I almost messed it up. I'm your host, Quan. I go by Q, and I am joined by a very special guest named Shane. Gosh, see, I was going to mess it up. What is it? Thrap?
Yeah.
Thrap? See, God, I almost said Thorpe, and I was like, I don't know why I wanted to do that. Shane Thrap, listen, y'all, we were talking beforehand, and we had a phenomenal conversation. And I think when you can have a phenomenal conversation beforehand, it really sets the tone for the actual podcast. Now, I will tell you guys, unfortunately, I didn't record that part of that conversation because it was a phenomenal conversation we were having, really fun, and I enjoy it having those conversations, talking about culture stuff like Super Bowl, which is craziness within itself. Which the Chiefs got blown out of the water. What an embarrassing thing to watch! But I also like that because I wanted the Eagles to win because I don't like the Chiefs winning. No, it's the Tom Brady effect, and I don't like it. Anyway, we're not going on that tangent. But that being said, guys, we're going to get deep into this topic in this conversation of ADHD. I've talked to several people on the topic of ADHD, and funny enough, they've all been women, which is not a bad thing. But I say that in the sense of I've never got the opportunity to talk to another father about ADHD and kind of like the struggles of that ADHD and as a father, and especially if your kids have it as well. But he also invites a mixture of autism, of ADHD and autism. Reading your website, is it DDHD? How do you say that? I can read it, AUDHD, but how do you actually say it? ADHD. Okay, I thought that was so dope. I was like, man, this is pretty cool. I get this. I understand this. But yeah. Anyway, y'all have heard him. You'll see him. Shane, can you kind of tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Shane Thrap. I am an ADHD life coach. I'm currently working with entrepreneurs and parents.
Nice.
And I've been a coach for going on 4 years now. And I am also really in tune with the ADHD world. I am the operations director for the Men's ADHD Support Group. I am on the board of directors for the Dueling Minds ADHD Support Group, and I run both the Men's ADHD Support Group online on Facebook and an ADHD and Autism Parent Support Groups on Facebook.
Wow, that's a busy life.
Yeah.
Busy life you got there.
I'm also the marketing lead for the International ADHD Conference that's in Kansas City this year.
Okay. Man, look, you got a lot going on. Well, I think the simple question to start off with is, what got you in wanting to get involved to the extent that you're involved in, right? Because you're heavily involved in this, in the ADHD realm, and it's actually for parents or for kids or those impacted by ADHD. But what got you into that, right? Because, for some, it's like, yeah, I have ADHD, but I'm going to go work this office job, So, what kind of led you down that path?
I've always known I was different, right? I've always been a weird kid. Grew up in the South and Northeast Texas. I didn't really recognize that anything about neurodivergence. Neurodivergence wasn't even really a thing whenever we were dealing with growing up and all of that stuff. And then, but my oldest son, his teacher came back and said, "Hey, we think that your son has ADHD." And I was just like, me and his mom had been separated for a couple of years at this point, and I was just like, what is this thing? And because when I heard ADHD, it's always been the crazy ass white kid in the corner, right? It's like that's what goes through my head, right? And then I started reading about it, and the more that I started reading about it, the more I started going, oh, there's a lot of answers here for me that are not even relevant to my son. They're very relevant to me, though. And so that kind of started like going down this rabbit hole of learning about ADHD. And then as I was learning about it and I'm starting to identify it with it, I kind of went to my, at this currently, like my new wife, and I'm like, hey, I think I have ADHD. And so she's a special needs teacher. And so she looks at me and she got a very different look on her face. And she was like, honey, you didn't know? And I'm like, I was like, no, I did not know. When did you know? And she's like, I knew when I read your dating profile that you had ADHD. And I'm like, and you didn't say anything? And she's like, no, I thought you were being a dude about it.
Man, that's so cool, because I will say it's one of those things where it's like, you didn't know you had ADHD. You're like, really? You didn't know? And you're like, no, I didn't. I just figured I was different. Okay, I'm different. You?
Yeah.
That's how it's not saying you, but that's the royal.
Yeah.
That's how it feels sometimes when you have ADHD. They're like, you didn't know that? Really? You sure?
And I see this a lot in the men's group.
Yeah.
I see a lot of dads who come in and like, yeah, my son has ADHD, and that's how I just found out that I have ADHD. And I like, this explains so much. And I'm like, yeah, that 100% does. And then like, as I kind of started like trying to go through that realm of things, it was so difficult.
Yeah.
Like the first doctor I went to, because I was like, okay, I'm going to take my mental health seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The first doctor I go to, and I tell her what all I'm dealing with, and she's like, oh, adults don't have ADHD. And I'm like, true. That's not what the literature says.
Yeah.
Because I've studied it. And she's like, well, I'm a professional. I know what I'm talking about. I'm like, and I was like, okay, cool. Right. She's right. She is a professional. I'm just some dude off the fucking street.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, well, what do you think I have? And so she's like, I think you have depression. Is what you're describing to me. And she was right. Like what I did describe to her, because I didn't have a clue about ADHD, was a lot of like what was bothering me at the time, which was a lot of really depressing things.
Mm.
And so I was like, okay. And so she prescribed me medication and told me to get into therapy. And I started taking the medication, and it was not good.
Yeah.
It was really not good. And then I was like, okay, let me get a second opinion. Went to another guy, told him what was going on. The medication, I'd had some reactions to a number of them. Mm. And one of them was I became manic a lot. Oh, and so I described to him what I was dealing with. And he's like, oh, it sounds like you're bipolar. And I'm like, I don't know, but what if it's ADHD? And he's like, not really. I don't think so. What you're describing to me is bipolar disorder. And I'm like, okay.
Gosh. Trust in the opinions, right? I get it.
You're like, these are doctors, so you're like, okay, but this isn't making a lot of sense. But then I started doing a lot more research into it, and I actually wound up moving. And when I moved, I talked to another doctor about it, and she was like, okay, well, let's take a look. And then they give you like these sheafs of fucking tests to take.
Yes.
I'm like, what? And like, is the test just for me to actually just try to take things? Like if I just like go through it, it's like, that's, obviously he doesn't have ADHD because he actually did it.
Right.
Like, oh no, some of those are for other people. I'm like, oh, you think I have other people who know me well enough to do this? Well, you're married. I'm like, okay, that's a valid point. My wife would actually, and she's a special needs teacher, so she gets this shit. But anyways, it's just like, it was so much. It was like, oh my God, but I went ahead and I powered through it and came back just like off the charts. Okay, cool. And then it was just like another just medications, and there really wasn't anything else coming at me. And like the medications that seemed to be working. And then so finally went to another doctor, where it was my therapist. I was working with her, and she was like, can we just try something? And I was like, sure. And she started going through this questionnaire, and she told me to relax. And I said, okay, cool. And so I stopped looking her in the eye. I just relaxed, and I just kind of just chilled. And the more that I started answering those questions, the more she was coming back to me, and she's like, I think you're autistic. Oh, wow. I'm like, the fuck you say? Because again, autism to me was like Rain Man, right? That's like hey, look, not that I can count cards or anything. She's like, but is there something you're really good at? And I'm like, she's like, are you not hyperlexic? And I'm like, yeah.
What's that mean?
She's like, read fast.
Okay, gotcha.
Massive oversimplification. Read fast, retain, the whole 9 yards.
Gotcha.
So it's the opposite of dyslexia, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
So for me, and I didn't really think this was a weird thing. I didn't even realize this is a thing. So most people read anywhere from 4 to 12 words at a, as they're going through. They read sentence, like left to right. Mm-hmm. I read paragraphs, like the entire paragraph up, top down. I didn't know that that's a weird thing. I didn't know that was.
This is how you're all supposed to read. Isn't this what we're all doing?
Didn't nobody else does this? Like nobody else just reads a paragraph at a time? And like, no, that's not. She's like, you've never thought that was extraordinary? And I'm like, no. She was like, didn't you get, awards in middle school for reading? And I'm like, yes. She's like, where were you at on the leaderboard? And I'm like, I was at 2,056 points. And she's like, what's the next person down? I don't know, 600. It's like in like a semester.
Yeah.
And she's like, how many more books did you read than those other people did? I don't know. And she's like, that's what I mean, though. There's some sort of exceptionality to the way that you think that makes you able to do that, but it also means that there's other aspects that are struggles for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not socially awkward. She was like, she gave me that look. Really?
You don't think you are?
Really? When was the last time you looked me in the eye?
And that's the thing. I'm like, I would never think that, I was socially awkward. I always thought, I was like, hey, I'm an extrovert. I'm like, I know how to talk to people. I can do all these things. It's funny is a lot of people would be like, you're a little awkward at times. I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, y'all the one who stopped talking. I'm going to fill the air with some words. Like we're going to, like if y'all stop talking, I feel that's an opportunity for me to just chime in. Well, if you don't got anything else to say, I have a whole lot to say. I'll fill the air until someone starts talking, And so, but that was like, I was considered, my wife told me, she goes, no, you can be awkward at times. I'm like, I don't like awkward silences. I said, it feels weird sitting here looking at each other, not saying anything.
You want to drive me up a wall? You just let a silence happen in a gathering.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you right now, it's getting filled real quick because I've got to have something.
Yeah.
Right? And like, I don't think that that's a weird thing. I never thought that was an odd thing. And like, my wife was like, no, a lot of people can just sit in comfortable silence.
That's not, see, no. I don't believe that exists. Those people are not real. Those are NPCs, okay? Those are NPCs. Those who can sit in silence. And I'm talking to y'all out there who can sit in silence and be like, this is comfortable. Shame on you. Do better, okay? Like, how do you do, like, okay, and honestly, I'm jealous, right? Because I say that because I am jealous because I wish I could just sit there and be like, I'm comfortable with the silence. Sure. I'm comfortable. I'm not. It irks me inside. It's like, why is there no noise? Why can't there be words? I thought we all got together for there to be noise, for us, our mouths to be moving, and we're just doing chat back and forth. You guys just want to sit here and not say anything to each other? I'm just going to go home then. This is weird. So,
like, I love it because for me, they're like, well, I'm just kind of sitting here thinking about a thing. I'm like, oh, okay, so what are you thinking about the thing? And they kind of go into description of the thing. And I'm like, do y'all ever have just like time where your brain just doesn't do anything?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh yeah, all the time. Yeah. I'm like, tell me about that. What is that like? And they're like, sometimes I just don't think about anything.
That must be nice.
No, I feel like I think you're lying to me. It's so weird because we keep I keep finding these little things. And look, for a lot of people, like, well, I stop thinking all the time. Does that mean I'm neurotypical? No, it doesn't. It's just, these are chronic things. These are things that like are all the time for us. And it's just just a slightly off kilter from the norm, from the neurotypical, that like so many people see it. And so many of us fight so hard to mask, to fit into these different things that we need to fit into, because we're just different enough to hit that uncanny valley effect, which makes childhood super freaking annoying.
Ooh.
And then as we get older, we start learning how to, and especially if we have those capabilities to do it, then we start masking and we become these just like very like integrated people into society. And then like we get older and it's so much harder to wear the mask, and things just get really weird really fast for a lot of people.
Yeah, I didn't get a diagnosis until I was 28. Now here's the thing. I knew I had it. My mom would tell me, and she would remind me all the time. And I don't say that because she was trying to be mean. But that, I think it was in part it was her way of just kind of being like, hey, you have ADHD, so or she would say you have ADD, so you gotta focus, try a little harder focus, try a little harder to do this. And I never really understood what that meant. I didn't really put too much thought into it. I just kind of was like, if it was serious, they'd be doing something about it, right? So because I didn't think it was serious, I was like, okay, cool. Well, I joined the Army and I'm going through my life, and I, finally, having access, and not say finally, but having access to medical care, whether it's behavioral health or whatever other things, mental health stuff. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go get checked out. And it's funny, I remember the day I decided this. I was talking to a guy, and I didn't think he had ADHD. I didn't know he had ADHD, but he was like, yeah, man, I have, he goes, I remember we're sitting in the car and he goes, yep, today's the first day that I'm taking, I think he was taking Ritalin. And he was like, today's the first day. And he goes, I can tell you, if this is how normal people feel, he goes, I've been missing out. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, today's the first day I'm taking Ritalin. I have ADHD. And I go, you have ADHD? I'm like, really? I'm like, what do you mean? I have ADHD. And I was like, we are not the same. You are different. Like, I was like, because he's the guy who's like, he can be very calm in a room. Like, but like, what I came to realize was like, oh, you don't have the hyperactive side. You just have the focus side. Right. And I'm like, oh, got it. I have combined. And I knew I had combined. So I was like, hey, what'd you do to go get that checked? And he told me, so I went and did it. Right. And I remember they gave me the big piece of paper that said, hey, this is for you and this is for your wife. And if you can get your boss to fill this out, maybe that free for them. I remember my wife filled it out and I was like, hey, so how was it? And she goes, well, if they show you the results, because she goes like, I don't want to really show you. I was like, well, I mean, I have to take it to them, so I'm going to see it anyway. But she goes, don't be mad at me. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, well, she goes, because, there's these questions, and she goes, I wish I could say no, but every time you would ask a question, I'd be like, yeah, that's Quan for sure. And then the next one, you're like, maybe the next one, maybe it was just one off. And you're like, no, that one is him. That is him too. Whew, okay, we're not batting so good here right now. And then in the third and fourth, and she goes, most of them were you. She goes, if not all of them. And she goes, so I don't be mad when you read it. I'm like, well, I said, listen, if the chips fall where they fall, they fall where they fall. So I handed in my results, and they're like, hey, we're going to do the test. And I kid you not, I remember the first test, and they would say, I think it was like 5 words, and I'm supposed to just repeat these 5 words back. Let me tell you, I got 4 of them, right? And every time she was like, okay, so we're going to do it again. And I'm going to say the words. She would say the words. I'm like, I got it. I got this. And she goes, okay, you're still missing a word. She goes, do you want it? We're ready to try this again. We did this like 5 times. And she goes, and I could tell on her face, she was getting kind of a little frustrated. Like, are you kidding me? You can't remember the stupid word, which is tent. You can't remember the word tent. And I'm like, and I was sitting there and I was like, I honestly, I'm really trying. I was like, please don't think that I'm trying to like purposely fail this test just to be like, yeah, I have ADHD. This is my solves all my life problems. I was like, understand, I'm really trying, right? I'm really trying right here. She said, no, you're good. I did another test. And then my favorite part of the test was they were like, hey, we're going to sit down and you're going to talk to one of the therapists, and we're just going to take notes and ask you some questions. I think that part usually is only supposed to take like 45 minutes. I had them in there for 2 hours, and it literally, I could tell the only reason we were able to break away was she was like, well, I think we need to take a bathroom break because we've been here for some time. I'm going to go to the bathroom. Matter of fact, and she looked at he was an intern. He was like, hey, I think it's time you move on to the last test here. And because I had to answer 100 questions. And they're like, good to go. But by that point, I could already tell they have already decided, like, this guy has ADHD. He is, he's there. We don't need this test, but we're going to finish it out. He has it, right? And so I remember getting the results and kind of being like, it was mixed feelings. It was like, I'm happy because it's like, hey, I have the results, the answer that I've been looking for. But at the same time, I'm like, well, damn, I have the results. I have ADHD. And I'm like, okay, so that means I am different, but how different? And then at the same time, like, what if I would have known sooner? Would I be where I am today, where some of the things that in my life that I just wasn't able to focus through or completely focus or hyperfixate, as they say, through to get it done or accomplished, turned into a failure? Could I have gone to college and not told myself that I was stupid and I couldn't go to, so it didn't make sense to go to college. It made sense to join the military. So I'm having to have the thought process of almost regrets of like, gosh, my life could have been completely different if I just would have known this thing about myself. And I could have, fought it in a way or combated it in a way where I'm like, okay, I understand it. Well, then fast forward, my daughter's getting older and I'm like, holy crap, I see it now. She has it. And this is why my dad was so frustrated, because it was the ADHD. Like, he didn't have ADHD. I was adopted, so he didn't have ADHD, but dealing with me and my twin brother who have ADHD, we were a handful. But for you, right, you finding out your kids have ADHD and then you have ADHD and then, so I don't know if both of your kids have ADHD, but your older son has ADHD, right? Wait, you have 4 kids? 4 kids?
Yeah. So I've got a 21-year-old, an 18-year-old, and 5-year-old twins.
Got you. Okay. So finding out your oldest has ADHD, and kind of, what was your thought process? Was there a moment of like, gosh, like, what caused this? How did this happen? What does this mean? Like, was there negative thoughts, or was it just kind of like, we can work our way through it? Or
a lot of it, once I actually started understanding what it was, I guess that's the biggest key right there.
Okay.
Was once I started understanding what it was, there's a little bit of, did I do this? I mean, it's hereditary, but that's not things that I can control.
Yeah.
Right. I can't control that kind of stuff. Like, I'm not a geneticist. I don't have access to $1 billion and things I can do anything about that. So, but what I can control is how I react to the situation.
Yeah.
Now, I knew that he was going to need a lot of help. I knew my daughter was going to need a lot of help, because the likelihood of them having ADHD, autism was pretty high because I have it. It's hereditary. But what I wanted to make sure what I was doing was not making too big of a deal out of it. But I did want to make sure they understood, you may struggle with things because of this issue. And so there was just a lot of time spent with me learning about it. And I was learning about it. I was learning more about myself, and I was learning about why I do certain things. And there was a lot of that grief, honestly, of what if I had known sooner. But there's a lot of philosophers out there talk about regret and honestly just how useless of a emotion it is to have. For me, it was much easier to transfer through that. For some people, it's not. For some people, like, grief is so strong. But for me, it was one of those moments where it was just like, yeah, what if? Great thought experiment. Not going to really worry about it. I'm going to work on my kids. What do I do? What do I do to empower them? Well, what do I do to empower myself? And since I didn't even know where I started with that was kind of like one of those places where, like, if I'm going to start, I'm going to start by, what do I need? And I kind of had already been working through this concept of just like accepting and just being who I am and finding happiness in that. And that's where I really focused everything, was finding happiness and joy in who I was, the way that I was, regardless of how I was.
Gotcha.
And I started finding a lot of the crossover between who I was, like fundamentally as a person, to who I wanted to be, which a lot of times was the mask that I wore. I said, okay, what if these things are things I actually do want to be, and I'm not just trying to be because it's societally expected of me to be?
Right.
And so I had to kind of build an understanding of who I was. And so as I'm moving through this process myself, I'm also moving through that process with my oldest kids. Like, I'm encouraging them to be happy with who they are. I'm encouraging them to be, to be willing to ask for help. I'm encouraging them to fail. It's really important for people to understand that we should be encouraging children to fail, because that's where we learn.
I think it's important also that kids fail as kids. And it's not to say they're not going to fail as adults, but I think as kids, when they fail more as kids, it means they've learned, they have more life lessons to apply to their experiences when they get older, versus the first time you fail. Excuse me, my nose wants to sneeze, but it's not happening. The first time you fail is when you're 16 and it's at the state championship, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm a huge failure. How do I recover from this, right? Or, gosh, it happened. Oh my goodness. Excuse me. Or when you're 21 and you have your first big job, working your first big project, and you don't meet that time hack, and you're like, I failed. Good Lord. Excuse me. I don't know where all this happened all of a sudden. But I think it's important as kids to learn what it is to fail. Also, I'll include in there what it is to lose. And I know you can incorporate those to be synonyms of each other. I think it's important because my daughter, for example, my oldest, very competitive, and she'll tell my youngest, she goes, oh, I race you. She's 2 years old. You are 6 going on 7. Race you? Are you kidding me? Her little legs. And she's going to go, and she's going to be like, follow you, like, because she loves you. But of course you're going to beat her up the stairs. You can probably you can skip 3 stairs. She cannot, and so she'll get up the stairs. She's like, I won. And I'm like, okay, all right, calm down there. I'll have her race me, right? I'll have her, like, we'll go outside. I was like, hey, it was race. And I beat her 3 times in a row. Let me tell you, that broke her. It broke her completely. And I'm like, what are you getting upset about? She goes, I never win. You're always beating me. And I'm like, hold on. I was like, hey, listen, see how you're feeling right now? I get it. I understand that. But I said that you're not guaranteed to win every single time. And I was like, Dad's not going to let you win just to make you feel better. I was like, because the world out there is not going to let you win just to make you feel better. I was like, you have to understand, like, losing is a part of life. However, if you don't want to lose, well, guess what that means? That means you have to get faster. And if you want to get faster, that means you have to practice. If you're going to practice, that means you got to put some time, set time aside to decide what you're going to do. And guess what? When you can beat Dad 3 times in a row, I guarantee you're not going to care anymore. But you just learned work ethic. You just learned what it is to dedicate time to something, right? And so, like, these are the thinking, the logical thinking. I don't call them thinking traps, but they're the flow of thinking that I try to get her into, because I want her to understand, like, how we tend to see things, especially those of us who are different are more neurodivergent, if you will, is I can think about 5 different things at once, whereas the average person is probably saying, like, hey, I need to send 5 emails today. I need to also go pick up some medication. Well, what I can do right now is send these 5 emails. So I'm going to go send these 5 emails. And once I'm done with that, I will move on to my next task. That is cool, bro. Can't do that. While I'm going to go pick up this prescription, I am also sending 5 emails because 1, it's more efficient. 2, if I'm not doing something multitasking at the same time, oh my goodness, I don't feel like I'm getting anything done. And it feels like if my internet's acting weird, what the heck? Oh, gosh, see, I knew I should have just been doing something else. This is just a waste of time. And I don't feel like I accomplished anything. So I will go I'll try to multitask. So, but I know I get it. I get it. And I think I think it is important that we teach kids, one, how to lose, but what it's like to fail. And it's not just so we just rub it in their faces. But again, I think I'll give you a perfect example. I have soldiers. I've had my prior job. I had a lot of soldiers under me, and when you become a soldier, and you're new to the Army, new to the military, one of the biggest things that they stress when you're in basic training is failing is not an option. Okay. And they don't necessarily stress it by yelling at you that, hey, failing is not an option. They put it to you in a way of, hey, I'm giving you this set of tasks and you need to accomplish them. Now, if you don't accomplish them, well, I mean, I'm sorry, but there are going to be things that you don't want to do, like push-ups, whatever, exercise, and we're going to do it until you get it right. So it's instilled in you that failure is not an option. Well, when you get to your first unit, you're going through all that. These younger soldiers are still in that mindset is that failure is not an option, but they try so hard to not to fail that they end up failing because they're hyper fixating on the fact of I cannot fail. And what ends up happening is they end up failing or missing something because they're not paying attention and whatever the case may be. And then it's like, hey, it's okay to fail. They're like, I can't fail. You're going to think bad of me. You're going to think I'm not a good soldier. I said, hold on. I didn't say that at all. Those are words that you put those are expectations that you put on me. I said, I didn't tell you that you couldn't fail, that you wouldn't fail. I actually told you the opposite. I said, I actually told you that you're probably going to fail. And I said, and I don't mean to say that as to say, hey, suck to suck, figure it out. No, I say that because I've been doing this for 12 years. You've been doing this for 5 minutes. And I'm sorry. It's kind of like a baby. I cannot expect the baby to run 2 miles when they barely know how to walk 5 steps. They're going to fail at it several times before they can run those 2 miles, right? And they're probably not going to be a baby. But that being said, it's like you got to expect to fail. But these soldiers didn't understand that. And so with kids, I think it's similar. It's like, hey, I have experiences that you don't have yet. So like my experiences on you and expect to do it the way I'm doing it when you didn't actually live my experiences. You don't know what it is, what I had to do to be able to do the things that I'm doing now. You don't know how hard it was or easy it was, whatever the case might be. But failure is okay because you learn lessons. You learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about how to do something, how not to do something. And then the best part is you can help somebody else and say, hey, you know what? I tried it that way and it didn't work out for me. It's not to say it's not going to work out for you, but if I had to do it again, this is what I would apply here. And this is what I do here only because of A, B, and C. And people are like, oh, wow, this is really helpful for me. So like, I get it. But for you, again, is it different, right? Because again, you have ADHD yourself and autism. So like, is it different in the sense of like being a dad and raising a kid with ADHD? Because there are dads out there who don't have kids who have ADHD, or they don't have ADHD, or the kids don't have ADHD. So like, how hard is that for you having ADHD yourself, being able to manage yourself, but then also trying to manage your kids in the sense of like, hey, all right, I know where I'm getting a little upset right now or on a short fuse or whatever the case might be.
Definitely put a bigger spotlight on my emotional regulation. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people out there, when I think about ADHD, they think about the hyperactivity and the daydreamer and things like that. And a lot of people really think about autism in much the same way. It's the socially awkward side of things. But a core component to both ADHD and autism is the ability to self-regulate.
Yeah.
That's the core issue. And the big part of that is the ability to regulate attention, right? That's this big struggle. Like, it's not that we don't see details. We see all the details. It's just we categorize them differently, prioritize them differently, things of that nature. Or there's also the regulation of emotion, though. And the emotion aspect is across neurodivergent. And we feel things more. We feel trauma more. We feel happiness more. We feel sadness more. We feel joy and curiosity more. We feel everything more. Life is much more intense for us. And for me, I'd already gone through a mindset change with my first 2 kids that I wasn't going to be like my father, right? I had made a conscious decision to break that cycle that had been passed down from his father to his to him. And I wasn't going to hit my children. Mm. Right? I had already had that conscious decision to make that. But I still had my temper. I still had the trauma from my childhood growing up with an alcoholic, abusive father and being raised in a cult. I still have that trauma. I kept finding myself put into situations where my natural inclination was the belt or was a swat to the butt. And I think that was the biggest kicker for me. It was like, okay, like in some cases, like I don't even remember anything happening, but things happened.
Yeah.
Catastrophic things that are unforgivable.
Mm-hmm.
And I made those mistakes because I didn't understand that my emotions literally could not be just controlled. And so whenever medication came into the world for me, that was when I actually started to get a control over my emotional regulation. And I started being able to have this pause, right? That a lot of people tell you, like, whenever you're just before you get mad, try to do something to such, and I actually had it once I had medication. And once I actually was able to learn in a way that made sense for me how to do those things, because I think differently. And so therapy has to be slightly different. And I think me having to learn all of that gave me a lot more insight into how I can start my kids off right.
Yeah.
And so like I learned a lot from the mistakes that I made with my first two children that my second two children will get to benefit from.
Yeah.
And, you know, my life is very much more about continuously improving, constantly getting better. And so just kind of taking that mindset of having the expectations for my children and having a really clear set understanding of ADHD and autism and neurodivergence, and then just giving them the tools and the support that they need. But coming from the emotional side of things, which for a lot of people with ADHD and especially a lot of people with autism is kind of difficult. But it took years of therapy for me to get to that point.
Man, that is I feel that because I didn't I get mad. Man, anger is like my go-to. And so like it's really easy to get angry. And I didn't for the longest time I didn't want to take medication because there was kind of this scarce idea behind taking medication based off from my mom and my dad, who told me what my older brother had experienced. And so I was kind of like afraid of like what could happen. But when I had finally decided to get on it 2 years ago, actually, it was January of 23, 2 months before I started my podcast. Probably the reason why I was able to just start my podcast. But I remember finally saying, you know what, I'm going to get on medication. And when I did, I was happy. I was happy in the sense of like I said, oh, I understand what it is to feel slowed down. Like my brain slowed down, everything in my mind slowed down. It was able to focus. It was able to understand. Like I naturally, I want to out the hip. I'm just like blah 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 blah. I'm just talking to me to speak right now. Let me just where was this my entire life?
Where the hell did that voice just come from?
Yeah, exactly. Like what is going on? It's like hey, old man, slow down. It's not your turn to talk yet. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. All right, his turn. His response to this. Cool. Okay, now it's my turn to talk. And now I'm fitting in more into the conversation and the conversation's flowing more. And now I still do analogy. I like analogies, so I'll use analogies. And for some people, they're like, what are you talking about? And I'll have to over explain my analogies where I'm like, okay, you said this, he said this. This is where my brain went. I'm sorry. This is why I utilized this analogy. Didn't make sense. I apologize. That wasn't my intent. My intent was for you to get the analogy, and then we all be on like, oh, yeah, I've done it before, right? But anyway. So I get that. A medication has been a saving grace for me. And I think I've talked to a few others who are like, no, like I'm not medicated. Medication, is this, it's that. I'm not a big proponent of my kids being on medication. I don't think kids need to be on medication, I think I don't mind as they get older. I think maybe maybe like I would say like 12, 13 maybe. But I think under like 13 years old, a lot of it is just let the kids be kids. Yeah, they probably have my kids have ADHD. My daughter has ADHD. I know that, but like at the same time, I'm more focused on allowing her to be a kid, and rather than feeling like she has to be different, and the only way she can be different or feel normal is if she takes medication. And so I want her to just kind of experience it herself and know her quirks. And then, later on in life, if me and my wife decide, hey, we're going to introduce medication because it's necessary, then we will. But as of right now, I'm just like, hey, just be you, so.
So the first line of defense whenever it comes to ADHD in kids, and the same thing for autism, is actually not even medication, especially before 6 years old. Heck, most doctors won't even diagnose a child before 6 years old with ADHD unless it's just like completely, apparent that the child is dealing with things in extreme ways. Especially if they were put into pre-K and kindergarten early. Like, we see a lot of situations like that where they'll do it. But the first line of defense whenever it comes to ADHD treatment in kids isn't even anything to do with the kids. It's parental training. And what that means is taking the time for the parents to get an understanding of what ADHD or autism is, and then working with a therapist to kind of get an understanding of what that means for their kid. And so that they have a better understanding of what to expect. Because now what we have to do is, a lot of parents read those books like What to Expect When You're Expecting and things like that. And it lays out all these milestones that a person is supposed to meet, like by a certain age. Well, that's for neurotypical people, right? And so if you have a neurodivergent child, the child's not going to meet those milestones the same. And so if your expectations are set at a certain level, then you've got to readjust those once neurodivergence is put in place, because some aspects of the child is going to be further advanced.
Yeah.
Some are going to be really laid back. And you need to have a better expectation of going, all right, I have this expectation. I need to remove that expectation, and I need to meet my child where they're at, and then design expectations based on that.
Yeah.
And then move forward with professionals. And so that's where the child is evaluated, and we start to see whether or not, all right, so the parent has been putting in place a lot of these techniques. They spent a lot of time doing that. But one of the first things that a lot of doctors will tell you, get your kids outside, make sure they're doing a lot of exercise and being out and about and being kids. Right? That's really important for it. That's a huge aspect of it. And I cannot tell you how bad our schools are really failing with lack of time outside in recess.
I agree with you, because I think it's one of those things is what I noticed with my daughter is she does really well if an hour outside here, an hour outside there, and then, if I need her to do something and focus on something, she can do that. She can give me that, right? But if it's a day, say it's a rainy day, like I'm in San Antonio right now, so it's been kind of rainy for the last few days right now, and it can't really go outside. But if it stays like this, where sometimes they're watching TV or whatever the case might be, and then it's like, hey, we do homeschool, so it's like, hey, come sit down table, do some school, or whatever. Her focus is not there. She can't do it. It's or I won't say she can't. It's very difficult for her to do so, and it's one of those things where it's like she has all this energy built up and she doesn't know how to release it, and it's like, she needs to just go run around the block, come back, and I promise, you might be tired. You might need to go do it another time because you're excited because you just ran around the block. But go do it another time and then come back, and then we'll be good, right? But sometimes I see that I see it where it's like, hey, you got a lot of energy, and you just need a place to release it. And you don't know where to release it. So like she tends to want to fight me all the time, and I'm like, what are you doing right now? She's like, yeah, we're gonna fight. So like, come over here so we can fight. And I'm like, hold on. You're 6. Calm down. That's one. Number 2, I can't hit a child. It's against the law.
Planet bombs. I'm bringing out the backyard wrestling. You want to box? You want to? Okay, cool. Daddy's got a suplex for you.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is she had a loose tooth once. Sorry, total tangent. ADHD moment. I love it. She had a loose tooth, and she wanted to wrestle, so we were wrestling, and so I had to. I think I did the Rock's move, or was it Stone Cold? I don't remember. Anyway, I was doing one of them, And I freaking was like, can you smell what the rock is cooking? And I threw her down on the bed. Well, her tooth came out because she bounced on my bed and then she bounced on the floor. And I was like, oh gosh, you okay? But then she was like crying upset. She goes, oh my gosh, you made my tooth come out. Now keep in mind, she is deathly afraid of having her teeth come out, like fall out. Because, she's kids, they're coming out. But she doesn't want us to pull them out. No. She does not even tell us that she has loose teeth anymore. She is like, you're going to pull them out and it's going to hurt. So that one time, this tooth was hanging on by strings at this point, right? And we didn't even know that. So when I did that, her tooth came out and I found it on the floor. I'm like, sis, this tooth was ready to come out. I was like, that's why it came out. She goes, no, I was like, she's all upset. And I was like, well, did it hurt? She goes, no. I'm like, okay. So I'm confused. I was like, you get a deal out of this. I was like, you get money tonight from the tooth fairy. I'm confused. She goes, yeah, just give me my tooth, and walked away. I'm like, why are you upset right now? You are the one that wanted to fight me. But anyway, it was a good time. It was a good memory. So
you better not be telling your mama I knocked your tooth out.
Yeah,
knock another tooth out for reals.
Well, if she has a loose tooth now, she'll literally be like, no, Dad, you cannot come over here and look at it. I'm like, I'm not gonna touch me. Yeah, she's like, I'm not gonna pull it out. I mean, if you let me over there and I get my hands on it, I'm gonna try to pull it out. But I'm not gonna tell you that from here.
I'm just gonna snatch it. I'm gonna snatch it. I learned this in the Army. Just stay still.
Stay still for 30 seconds. I promise. It won't hurt. It might, but don't worry.
I saw this on Kung Fu.
Pain is just something a mind thing. Don't worry about it. But it was one of those things. I love it.
Yeah.
These okay. So I'll be honest. Like talking to another dad, talking to someone who understands and has their own experiences. This is big for me, and I think it's big for the audience because we laugh and it's fun times, right? But I think a lot of times in the moment there were some times where we're just like, if I just weren't, and I'm speak for me, I won't speak for you, but for me it was like if I just were normal. My kids would be normal and, I wouldn't have to necessarily worry about the fact of like, she's got all this energy that she has to get out, that she doesn't know how to release it. And I got to do, kids are kids, whatever. But like, still like, I wish, or if I was just normal, and I didn't give this to her, this thing to her, she wouldn't get so mad at herself for forgetting things, because she forgets all the time. And she tells me, she doesn't know. But she tells me, she goes, Dad, you remember everything. And I forget everything. And she goes, and she starts crying when she's telling me this. And I get so upset because I feel for her. And she doesn't know, like she really doesn't know how bad it is for me when it comes to remembering things. But I'm like, and she's just like, Dad, I just forget and I don't know what it is. Then it gets me in trouble and I'm not trying to get in trouble. And it humanizes me to the point where I realize I'm like, okay, if I had the parents who took the time to really understand, and I'm not here to crap on my parents. I think they did a phenomenal job, right? But if I had them, if there were just moments where they took more time to understand the ADHD and understand what it is, try to understand what it is I'm thinking and understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, because believe it or not, there is a method to the madness. I'm not just doing it for the sake of doing it, but there is a method to the madness. And so, and understood that, then they could correct me to say, hold on. I get you. I see you. However, if you do that, then everything you did over here is going to be null and void. And and then we're going to be right back where we started. And the best example I have is when it comes to my daughter cleaning her room. She'll be like, well, I need a vacuum first. I'm like, sweetie, no. You need to pick up all the toys off the floor first. Then you vacuum. And she's like, well, I can just vacuum this area. And then I'm like, no. Okay, look, I get it. You're getting really excited right now. I was like, let's start simple. Just go make your bed. All I need you to do is go make your bed and then come back to me. And it's very important that when I tell her this, come back to me for further directions. Don't try to deviate yourself because you're not ready for that yet. Come back to me and I will give you follow-on directions step by step. And then once you learn the step-by-step directions that I'm giving you, and then I can say, hey, go clean your room. Then you understand, then what clean your room means. Right now, when I say clean your room, all you see is this huge mess and it overwhelms you. And you're like, how am I going to clean this thing? This is going to be impossible, And so it's sometimes one of those things where I'm like, I wish I didn't give it to her. But at the same time, I think God blessed me with her because she's just like me, to where I have the opportunity to be the dad that I thought my dad should have been to me, having ADHD. Again, keep in mind, not crapping on my dad. He didn't have ADHD. I was adopted. So I kind of give him some grace in that aspect. But still, now I get to say, okay, I have this experience. I know what it's like. So now I'm going to give this to my kid, where it's like, I can give them that grace because I know what their mind is. I know what she's thinking.
Yeah. I take it one more step further than that.
Okay.
And I think it's for me, the turnaround point was me in a session with my therapist talking about how I just wish sometimes things were normal. Mm-hmm. And so my therapist, she was probably about 4'10", and I am 6'1".
Oh wow!
I am a big dude. And I think that I had just caught her on a bad day, or if I had just said this one thing so many times that she just lost it. But she just, like I said something like, I wish you could just be normal. And she's like, dear fucking God. And slams her pen down and she's like, there is no normal. There's no such thing as normal. Normal does not exist. Every single person does a single different thing differently every single day. Like, nobody does the same thing the same exact way. There's no such thing as normal. Mm. She's like, there's a way some people do things, and there's a way that other people do things that happen to align on a general idea, right, of how to do things in a certain way. But you can cook an egg in so many different ways. You can cook potatoes in so many different ways. You can only put together a bike in so many different ways. There is no normal. There just happens to be a status quo that most people adhere to. And I think, like, and she was also screeching it at me at this point, so it finally had started sticking. And this was something she was very passionate about. And I had the emotional capacity at the point because I was on medication for it. So instead of like feeling like really like, oh my God, I did something wrong. Oh no. I had that moment, right? The guanfacine or the Lamictal gave me the moment to recognize that this was just something she was passionate about and not get mad and miss the point. But I think that was the key for me. And of course, my alarm's going off because I have ADHD. Anyways, sorry, my bad.
You're good.
But no, I think that was the point for me to make it really crystallized for me about what I was going to do for my kids. And that was just remove any concept of normal. Gotcha. Right? I was just going to get rid of it. I was just going to reset all of my expectations to, first off, meet my kids where they were, right? Acknowledge their strengths and really develop an understanding of that, of who they were, and really just grasp and enjoy that time with them, of them just being who they are, and me not having this expectation that they're going to be a football star or a singer or whatever. I wanted my expectations to be set where they were and then grow with them. And I think that's the key right there for me as a parent, is just to, like, I don't have to worry about the ADHD or autism or anything like that, because I'm growing with my children as they're growing, and we're just growing together and learning to fail together, learning to win together and stuff like that.
Well, I think that it, sometimes when we do that reset, it's not only good for us or good for them, it's good for us. And then on top of that, you can then, you're able to take a step back and look at it like okay, all right, how is it, for example, how might my therapist be seeing these things that she's noticing and telling me, and sometimes I'm not listening because, I think I'm always right. It's probably a thing. I got it, guys. I'll figure it out one day. Don't worry. So how might he or she be seeing it? And let me take a step back to be like, oh, okay. All right. Got it. I see, I see where I see where I was mistaking, not wrong, mistaking.
Mm-hmm.
Words are important, people. So I was mistaken. I wasn't wrong. You are still wrong. I was just mistaken. Anyway, no. It was one of those things where, we can finally step back and be like, okay, got it. Just reset it. I was doing research and I saw a thing that there were a lot of, I don't know who it is. I was trying to look it up. There are a lot of people who are celebrities, but tech folks who have autism or some things, some neurodivergent thing, right? And I used to think like, okay, to be one of them, they had to be normal. To be a CEO of some big company, you had to be normal, And then I realized it was actually the opposite. You really probably want the folks like myself or yourself who can think about 15 different things at one point, and you're like, you know what? I can definitely run this company. What are you doing over there? You're doing it wrong. Fix it. This is how you fix it. Okay. If I go over there and fix it for you, we're going to be here all day. And you don't want that. And I pay you already too much. So I'm going over here. All right. Now I'm fixing it. I'm saying, like that, I noticed that a lot of these folks, they had, considered sprouted late, where they were like, they're in their 30s or their 40s and their companies are hitting the Fortune 500 and whatever, or they're becoming the top leading companies or they're leading CEOs of the world. And I'm like, that to me it gives me inspiration to know like, oh, okay, I didn't just have to try to pigeonhole myself into, well, if I wasn't successful at basketball and going to college and going to the NBA, well, that means, I wasn't going to be successful in anything because basketball was it for me and I didn't have anything else. When in reality is like, I can do so much more. I just kind of ride the flow. I call it ride the flow. It's similar, not to be YouTube, don't get me in trouble or anything when I say this, but, kind of ride the high, people ride the high, you're just kind of going with the flow and you're like, cool, I think I like this, or cool, I can do this. And then you're learning so many things along the way to where the point where, voila, you got mediocre dads. So that is where we're at. That's where I was able to do it. But I learned so much by just kind of being accepting of the fact that I have ADHD. I'm not perfect. I do have to learn a lot. I do have to focus more on social cues and body language when I'm talking to people to make sure that I am not hijacking the conversation or making them feel like, oh my gosh, this guy's a lot to deal with it. So like I focus on those things to make sure, or try to make sure I'm doing where I should be. But again, I love my ADHD so much because it has allowed me to meet people. It has allowed me to be a part of conversations where people are like, how do you know that? And I'm like, I don't know. Just looked it up once and now it's stuck in my head. But if you ask me what I had for breakfast yesterday, I couldn't freaking tell you. But you know what? We're going to finish here, but I do want to phone it, but I want to give you an opportunity to really kind of, one, tell us about your coaching and tell us about where people can find you if they want to get more information. Because again, there are a lot of people out there, a lot of dads out there, or young men who are coming dads who are like, hey, this is a thing for me right now, and I don't know how to handle that.
Yeah, so you can find me at creatingorderfromchaos.com.
I like that.
All one word. And, Shane Thrapp, if you look me up, I'm on, this work I'm doing as a Creating Order from Chaos as a coach. I do a lot of consultant work for companies. I am primarily working with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and parents. I know that's a really weird dual thing. It just happens to be I have ADHD and I like to do things at different times.
There you go.
Right now it happens to be entrepreneurs and parents. But also the nonprofit that I run, the Men's ADHD Support Group, you can find them on Facebook by the same name. Also the website's men'sADHDsupportgroup.org. And then duelingminds.org is the other nonprofit that I work on. It's ADHD support. Right now I'm doing a lot of work with parents, so I'm really I'm looking at doing some group coaching here in the near future. And if anybody's interested, y'all can check out my website on my parenting page and sign up to find out more.
Awesome. Final question, because I think this is a big deal. Because I think a lot of my friends, especially right now, they're just becoming dads. And so, there is a lot of concerns for not just being neurodivergent, but other concerns, other issues. Like, when you create a human being, and you realize like, oh my gosh, there's so much things that could potentially be wrong with them because this world is scary, and you're just like, this is a human being that we're creating. So to those new dads, or it doesn't have to be dads, but it's just new parents in general, right? What would be one piece of advice that you would give them if they're worried or concerned that their kid is going to be autistic or have ADHD?
Not to worry about it. All it means is your child thinks differently, and most likely you're going to have a lot more to do, in common with them than you think you will. Autism doesn't mean you're broken, right? It doesn't mean that you're not perfect because of ADHD and autism. They're labels to categorize a different way of thinking, a different way of perceiving the world. They don't necessarily mean that you're broken. The only metric in the world that is something that we struggle with whenever it comes to having ADHD and autism is because the world is built around neurotypical people, and that's the struggle. That's the disability. Is we don't live in a society that gets that neurodiversity is a true thing, and we're starting to get to a place where neurodiversity was starting to get understood a lot more, and hopefully we keep moving forward in that direction. But at the same time, we need to understand that there literally is no normal. Even neurotypical is just that one category on what is neurodiversity in total.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because I didn't expect that answer. I'm not going to lie. I thought you would go somewhere else, but I love that. Because I think if I would have heard that like 2 years ago, this journey would have been a lot easier. Now it's been hard, and I've gotten to that point now. But if I would have heard that 2 years ago, I think it would have been a lot easier as far as parenting goes. Because it concerned me for where I didn't sleep at night because I was like, how do I help my daughter? How do I get the ADHD out of her? Because I didn't want her to have it. And it scared me.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, but it doesn't work that way. So she's stuck with it. But I do tell her, every so often, not all the time, but I do tell her every so often. I said, hey, never be afraid, never be ashamed of your brain and how it thinks and how you do things. I said, if mom or dad, are doing something and your brain is telling you something else, I was like, never be afraid to speak up and tell me, like, Dad, like I think I should do it this way because A, B, and C. And I told her, if you explain it to me, I said 9 times out of 10, I can be like, gosh, okay, that kind of makes sense. And I see why you're thinking that way. Let me redirect you a little bit. And that's a phenomenal idea. Go do it, go execute. And now you feel more confident, 1, to talk to your parents, but 2, to also just go execute. Go take care of whatever you need to go take care of. I know military guys, I use the terminology execute. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I've kind of said similar things to my 21-year-old. But like, he's like, oh, okay. I said, like, honestly, I'm gonna be real with you. It's more likely I'm just morbidly curious to see if it'll work your way.
Right. 100%.
I'm just here for the ride. It's like, like, if it works, cool. If not, I am going to reserve the right to ridicule you just a little bit. As a parent, I get to do it.
Oh, I love it so much. Look, hey, when kids get older and they realize, hey guys, when you become parents, you get this opportunity that we have where we get to be like, hey man, that sounded like a good idea. Execution was poor, but I love the effort. I love the idea. Don't do that again because you will get us in trouble with mom. Please don't do that again.
I literally used that just the other day because my daughter, she's like, her new thing is she wants to show me something she learned at physical therapy. And I know for a fact that she didn't learn this from physical therapy, but she said she learned it from physical therapy. And I said, what? And no warning, just trust fall
Gosh,
leaps through the air. She's like 4 feet away on the ladder going up to her brother's bunk. And I'm going, dear God, there's 40 pounds of child jumping in the air at me. I have to catch this one. Or, yep, there's definitely a rocking chair behind me, not a thing to redirect. And so she crashes into me, and I'm like, okay, hey, honey, yeah. So did you really learn that in physical therapy? And she's like, yes, it's a trust fall. And I'm like, I feel like, no, I don't think that actually happened. Can we talk? She goes, but I trust you, Daddy. And I'm like, yeah, don't do that in front of mom. Don't do it to mom. But that can be our thing. But don't do it to your mother, because she will let you fall.
She loves you, but she will let you fall. And she'd be like, lesson learned? Good. Get up and go to bed. Oh, man.
Like, mommy's not as strong as daddy.
Yes.
Mommy is strong. She's not as strong as daddy. And you jumping at range is a handful.
Look, Mom, it's funny because Mom has probably thought about it. I could catch you. It's probably going to hurt me. And I don't want to get hurt right now.
Yeah. Mama will do a sidestep.
Oh, no. My ankle. Gosh, my Achilles. Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. Are you okay?
She'd be like Samoa Joe off of AEW wrestling, where you see somebody jumping at him, he just walked away.
You're looking at, why are you doing that right now? Okay. Man. Anyway, sorry, guys. Got you on here. We could joke for hours, it feels.
Yeah.
But, hey, Shane, thanks for coming on. Guys, go check out his website. All of his stuff will be in the description below, so don't worry about it. You can go check it out. It's been an awesome time. Thank you for coming on, Shane. I really do appreciate it. It means a lot to me. And I think, we're going to have to do this again. Because I think there's a lot of cultural conversations like we were having before that we could just really go down a rabbit hole that I really want to talk to you about. So we're definitely going to have to do this again, where we can just less do more of the bad dad stuff, but more about the random conversations that I think you guys would appreciate. So,
yeah, I'd love to talk politics with you.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It'd be fun.
I think. Well, look, let's set so after this. Let's set something up, and we can definitely get into it because I think we'll have a good conversation. We'll have a good time.
Yep.
So, hey guys, thanks for joining us. And as usual, being mediocre is a choice. You have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. That's all I got. Mediocre Dad's out.